Welcome back to Total Freedom Radio, the show that's all about raising the bar of knowledge, healing hurting people, and spiritual warfare. We are back in our ancient paganism class tonight. We'll get to that just in a minute. First, I want to let you know that you're going to tune in on KRRB Radio, revelationradio.net. Then it'll go to Rumble, YouTube, and Brighteon, and some other places. Um, if you have an amazing story of healing to tell, if you have an interesting story that you've run into, let's say with the elements of darkness. I've heard some real interesting ones the last few years and the last few months. Contact me at askrenalyn@yahoo.com. Again, you're tuning in on KRRB Radio, and I want to remind you that I am writing the book series, Prepare for the End. And I just got book 6 completed on editing. I got the new book cover created. And by the time you see this program, it should be out on Amazon. I'm going to make the ebooks on book 1 and book 6 free for 6 months. So if you have not started, it'd be a really good time to do so. So be sure and like, comment, subscribe, share this with your friends. And if you would like to keep this content coming, please support me. Go to arenalyn.com, hit that donate button. And also, I'm affiliated with Saving God's Children. So go to savinggodschildren.com, drop in a donation for Craig so he can keep the great material out. He's free to everybody, but he does do that out of his own pocket and sends the materials. So we would appreciate that. Okay, let's go right into our subject tonight. We are in part 15, excuse me, paganism in the Middle Ages still, and tonight we're going to start talking about Wicca. Now, this will come up along because it is the same religion that's been going on from the beginning, but tonight we're going to start breaking it down a little bit. We're going to talk about evolution and reincarnation, thought forms, pantheism. Then we'll talk a little bit about rituals, spells, and circles, and the next time we'll go into some of the Wiccan tools. So let's get started. Let me find my PowerPoint down here. Kind of tends to swarm on me occasionally. All right, here we are. So Wicca is also called witchcraft. And those of you around my age, that's just we'd never heard of the word Wicca. We called it witchcraft, but that is another word for it. This is a pagan religion from medieval Europe, and it's thought to come through the Celtic tribes migrating into Europe from the Middle East around 700 BC. Most religions are based on a specific writing or a holy book that tells the followers how to practice the religion. Christianity has the Bible, Islam has the Quran, Buddhism has the Pali text, etc. Each one has their own thing. So, what does what does Wicca have? Unlike these, Wicca has no written guide or holy book. Each group of Wiccans, usually called a coven, writes its own code. It's what's called a book of shadows. And if you're watching on YouTube, Rumble, or Brighteon, one of the videos channels, you'll see that I've got a row of them down here on the bottom of pictures. If you're on KRRB Radio, revelationradio.net, hop on over to one of those after this and look at some of these pictures. And drop a comment, please, for me. This means that many who call themselves witches actually teach conflicting views. Not that that's uncommon in other religions as well, may I point out. Um, a large number of Wiccans teach their religion is nearly identical with that of Druidism, which did not leave any written records either. The basic teachings of Wicca are just like those of pre-flood paganism. So we've been talking about that quite a bit, and so now we're going to start breaking it down, getting into some of the more nitty-gritty. So the first things we're going to talk about, and I may not say these words right, so bear with me if I don't. We're going to talk about Sabbats and Esbats. 8 pagan holy days are celebrated by Wiccans, Druids, and other pagans alike. The 4 mid-seasonal days are referred to as the Sabbats. The 4 lesser days, the solstices and equinoxes, are called Esbats. See the chapter on the pagan holy days for details on how these got started and were adopted by pagans, and we'll get to that. All right, we've got Samhain, which we call Halloween in America and other places. We have Yule, which is around Christmas time. There's Imbolc, which is February 1st. There is Asherah. Can't see where that's at right at the moment. We have Beltane, which is the 1st of May. A lot of people call it May Day. We have Lithra, which is in June. I think it's 19 through the 22nd, somewhere around in then. There's another one that's I literally cannot pronounce this name. You guys just look it up and see do the best you can do. We have Mabon, which is in around September 19th through 22nd, and then we're back around to October. So let's go and look forward to that. All right, so Wicca is one of the fastest growing religions in America. So how did this happen? And if you're looking on the video platforms, you're going to be looking at some tiles that I made down here. When I was young and growing up, we had Bewitched, we had the Munsters, we had I Dream of Jeannie, we had the Addams Family. Oh, everybody remembers the little witch and her cackling in the Bugs Bunny cartoons, I'm sure. Around the time my children were being raised, there was Sabrina the Teenage Witch and Charmed and several other things. And we wonder how this got so popular with our young people. Then, when my children were growing up too, it kind of evolved a little bit. Now we had Harry Potter. And I will never forget, it was the big deal about Harry Potter, and I knew it was about witchcraft, but not necessarily what it was about. So I went to our local library and I checked out the first couple of books because that's just the kind of mom I was. I read everything before I let them read it, or didn't. And happened to be, you know how the Lord works, and I want to stop right now and dedicate this show to the Lord because I forgot to do that as I began. This is a Christian radio show. It is a Christian radio platform. All right. I checked out the Harry Potter books, and then I looked around in our little tiny local library. There was a small little shelf of religion, and I always checked it out because you never knew what might be there. Well, lo and behold, shocking to me in our little town, there was a book called The Witchcraft Primer, and I checked it out too. And I read it first, and I was really glad I did because when I read the Harry Potter books, and I didn't read them all, just the first couple just to kinda get a feel, but the very first book, I spent using paper clips and sticky notes to get my notes together for what I wanted to teach. It was the exact same witchcraft primer wrapped in one of the most beautiful stories I had ever heard. It was great, but it was identical. So I took my daughter, I think she was 8, 10, somewhere thereabouts, took her out to the carport one day and we had the conversation and I just flipped from page to page. And it really helped because she had said one day, you know, I can't do anything. Everything's occultic. Because we were breaking down cartoons at that point. We were breaking down movies. We were doing all kinds of stuff. So I went and I asked the Lord, at what point do we need to start teaching our kids this? And he took me to the word where Mary went to see Elizabeth. And when she showed up, John the Baptist leapt in Elizabeth's womb when the Lord came. And I realized that he had known truth from before he was born. Cartoons are teaching it at 1 year old. So I threw away this worry about teaching her too soon, teaching them too soon. I had 2 children. But this is where we began. Or where we stepped it up, I guess I should say, because we had already began some of this stuff. All right. What does Wicca teach about God? Wicca teaches goes right back to the doctrine of emanations that we started out with in chapter 1, that there was a God or a power that anciently created everything. Since it did this by putting itself into creation, it no longer existed. Remember, it took from itself and made into creation, took from itself and made into creation, and it diminished while creation grew with, but creation was made of the godlike substance, shall we say. So, of course, no one remembers what it was. We and all life, according to Wicca and false religions of many types, are from it, and therefore we also are evolving into gods. Now, I kind of got, I got a real strange mind, people, just so you know. But I've thought about this a million times. Okay, we came from God according to this doctrine of emanations. We come from it, out of it, and we are a sentient being for a while. And then we dissolve back into this pool of godlike substance, shall we say. But we're evolving into gods. But when you're back into that godlike substance, you're not an individual. So, how does that even work? So, I've got some pictures down here for those that you can see it, and for those of you that can't on the radio, I'll go ahead and describe it. This is some of the ideas or the tenets of pantheism. Eckhart Tolle says, "You are the universe, expressing itself as a human for a little while." All right, the creating universe appears to come from the one. It came from the one, all was dispersed out creation, and now as creation dies off, it goes back into the one. Another idea, and I can't see the name on who put this, it's too small, but it says the doctrine of pantheism is that everything is God, in contradistinction to the doctrine that God is everything. Now, one of the things that I've noticed with New Age religion, pantheism, different things, is a lot of times their terminology will parallel Christianity, but the vocabulary meaning is completely different. Pantheism is seeing the natural world as divine. It's a very different thing than seeing divine God present in all things. And again, I've said this from the beginning. You have to understand this doctrine of emanations because it is the crux behind all of these other religions. All right, so let's look at another tenet of Wicca and some of the other religions. We're going to look at evolution and reincarnation. Wiccans teach that we are continuing to evolve into gods through a process of evolution and reincarnation. The Hindus believe in karma, which means if a man lives an evil life, he will downgrade in his next reincarnation. He may come back as an animal. In Wicca, there's no concept of karma. You'll either learn your lesson in advance or you'll come back and do this life over again, excuse me, until we get it right. We'll see this Wiccan concept was taught among the first century Gnostics in a later chapter. And there's a little bit of Gnosticism in this teaching, and then later on we'll go into what's called Third Corinthians that was said to be written by Paul, and we'll break down Gnosticism quite a bit. It's pretty much a head-to-head between Paul and the Gnostics. And the very first part will actually break out what this book is, where it came from, why we would even look at it before we even get to what it talks about. All right. Since we're evolving now again, this is Wicca, we're talking about magic powers here. Since we are evolving into what the creator once was, some of us who are more advanced than others will display godlike powers. These are referred to as psychic powers. I like to refer to this as counterfeit gifts of the spirit. But here's one of those, which bucket are you gonna put it in ideas? Whenever there is pantheism, Wiccanism, all of these other religions, one of the things that I have ran onto over and over again is that they have this concept that some of us are more advanced than others. That means we have more power, more position, more value, if you will. That's not a Christian concept. Christianity teaches humility. It teaches that we're all made of God. It teaches, or not made of God, excuse me, we're all made in the image of God. We're all basically equal. And you can go into a Christian store anywhere, and assuming you have the money and the desire, there's nothing in that store that you can't buy. There's no biblical teaching that you can't avail yourself of from day one. You can go to the best teacher there is. You can put as much money and time in it as you want, and there's nothing withheld. One of the things that I always look for when I'm evaluating teachings and stuff is any type of false religion. There are, you start out a novice, and then you go all the way up to an adept or a wizard, but there's certain levels that you can only go to, and you can't have any of the knowledge from the other level until you reach it. So that's a kind of those, which bucket does it go into too? If there's hidden knowledge, if there's knowledge that you cannot avail yourself, make that be one of those red flags. Because in Christianity, literally, there's nothing withheld from us. It's all there from day one. It's how much of it do you want to avail yourself of? Be a good Berean and search it and find out for yourself. All right, one of the things that Wiccans teach is about spirits. They teach that the real spirits out there are nature spirits. They usually call them elementals, and there are ancestors evolving into more powerful gods. Now remember, go back to the doctrine of emanations, go back to the ancestral worship. If you are dying and you're coming back again as somebody else, and then you're learning more, you're dying, you're coming back reincarnated as someone else. Your ancestors should be quite a bit down the road from you, correct? They should know more. They should be closer to that godlike person or position that they are all headed to. So that's one reason they call upon their ancestors and these gods. Now we've learned about the concept of nature, spirits, or elementals, and the worship of ancestors and teraphim already. We know what they actually are. In fact, what the Bible says is that the things that the pagans um, offer to is demonic. So keep that in mind as well. All right, one of the things that's a very important tenet of Wicca is what's called thought forms. Now, this I'm going to spend just a few minutes on because there's some stuff of this that I've seen leaching into the church that has greatly bothered me. All right, here's the Wiccan thought on this. Since we are the highest form of God, remember we come out of that primordial soup, if you will, and we're that bubble up on top that's this sentient being for a while. If a large group of people worship a particular god or ancestor, over time, the energy expended from their worship, they believe, actually creates a living entity. Now, you've heard this concept before that God didn't create us, we created God. This is kind of some of that. This is called a thought form. When enough people worship a particular god, a particular ancestor, a particular spirit out there, then it manifests into a living entity called a thought form. So, in other words, they believe that we create the gods we worship. This same concept of thought forms is taught in Tibetan Buddha. It's not uncommon in some of these other religions. All right. In thought forms, you can see amorphous shapes or auras around people and animals. Shadows or misty beings. I know you've heard of shadow people. If you've studied any of this stuff for very long, that's part of it. So the better you get at channeling your thoughts, the more complete and solid you can create them, according to the Wiccan religion or practice, whatever you want to call it. All right. Since most Wiccans do not believe in a literal devil or demons, their explanation for when new practitioners see demons or get possessed is that they have crossed over from reality and they've entered the world of thought forms unknowingly. Now, this is a brilliant tactic of Lucifer, because even though Wiccans can now see demons, they don't believe in them. I remember I've got a book, can't think of the name of it. It's by Ray Youngin, I think is in his name, and he's in there. It's in my New Age religion class. He talks about when people go into oh, what is the term I'm looking for? It's just where your thoughts are transformed. I'll think of it in a minute. But basically, be careful because newbies don't understand that you can run into some really dark powers there. And again, they're taught that they see them, they know they're there, they know they're dangerous, but they don't believe they're real. It's just so mind bending to me. You know, you can experience something but because it's called something else, now it takes the truth out. All right. Here is a quote from idlehots.com. This is Doreen Virtue. And if you've not heard of Doreen Virtue, I have her book series over on my shelf on indigo children, crystal children, star children, that sort of thing. Very new age teaching back in the day, but there's some very interesting things there. I might do a show on that at some point. But I would love to report that in the times from I began to study some of her stuff to see what is actually being taught about these things. And later on, I found out she had gotten saved and she had accepted the Lord. So I'm real proud about that. But this was obviously before that. All thoughts create thought forms. When you think about anything, an electrical impulse is released. Its charge gathers into a form that appears clairvoyantly like a soap bubble. In other words, your thought brings this into reality. The thought form creates, manifests, and attracts to that which is similar to it. Okay, so this is part of what's the setup is you got to be careful what you think because what you think is going to manifest. All right. And here is a quote by a man named Stephen Richards that goes along with this. By priming your subconscious mind, you are allowing it to run in the background, and that way you're actually sending out positive thought forms from your subconscious in the waking state. And I'm going to comment that just in a moment, but let's add the counterpart to it. Allowing a negative sentence in your head to end itself forms the very nucleus of negative thought forms. Now, I want to stop right here and I want to talk to the church. And I'm going to particularly talk to the ladies of the church right now because there's something that has just really bugged me for years. This positive thinking movement. And please understand that I am not against positivity and I am not against thinking on good things. Paul tells us to think on good things. But it has been taken to the level of absolute ridiculousness. Someone can be one of the most cringe moments I've ever had in my life is someone I knew had just lost a child, and they were in the emotional, psychological, and mental shape that you would be in if you just lost your child. And a lady, let's just say from the church, breezed in and, asked this person how he was, and he was honest about where he was. And she literally took him to task because he was not positive. And, I've never will forget the look on this gentleman's face. My own versions of this. There are some things in life that are not positive. Think about Elijah when after his deal with the prophets of the Baals and he ran and he was miserable. There's lots of incidents like that in the Bible. There's positive thinking, and then there is this ridiculous level of positive thinking. It negates truth. It negates where people really are, and I can be honest with you. It locks people's pain inside them because they can't talk about it and work it through. And people in the church do not realize, I don't think, this positive and negative thinking affecting your world around you actually comes from Wicca. It comes from the religion of the fallen angels from before the flood. Be positive, be upbeat, be all of that stuff, but take it reasonably, and please do not impose that on someone whose life is just devastated. I can tell you right now, at the most devastated point in my life, those people did not help me. They hurt me more than anything in the world except people who put me in the place that I was at. I have lots of friends who've endured that. People have left the church because of that. And I'll never forget a friend that I was helping through something a little bit later, and she told me, she said, "Please don't start this positive thinking junk. I just can't deal with that." And I looked at her and I just laughed because I knew exactly what she was saying to me. And I said, "Let me tell you my take on that. I want to be with you where you're at. I know the way you're hurting, and I'll sit with you. I'll stand with you. I'll hold you when you can't stand. If you are sitting in the middle of hell and can't pick yourself up, I'll sit down beside you. And when you get ready to walk out, I'll walk out with you. And if you can't walk out, I'll carry you out." And in the church, we have hurting people coming in that are being ran out in so much numbers because of some of this positive thinking stuff. People need you to meet you where they're at in their pain and help them through their pain, not tell them that it doesn't exist or that they can't experience what they're actually experiencing. And I'll probably revisit that later, but for now, I better leave it alone. All right, here's some pictures of thought forms. Now, you on the radio, you're not going to see this, so I'm going to try to explain it to you. But again, hop on over to the video platforms. You've all heard of orbs. I know a lady who is a part of a church that has pictures of orbs on her phone that she sees around her all the time, and she believes that they are angels. That is not correct. An orb is a thought form. It is a demonic spirit, if you will. Sometimes they come in the form of shadow people. We've all seen on TV and cartoons where they're doing the little rituals, and the little wispy person is almost like a see-through ghost. That would be a thought form. Google that. There's all kinds of pictures out there that people have drawn. Let me change screens and we'll look at some more. Well, I don't know where that one went. I have another one that's coming up in just a minute. All right, let's look at rituals, spells, and circles. A Wiccan ritual consists of drawing a magic circle on the ground and then in ritual form gathering power from the people. That's the people there at the ritual. If enough people are present or they're gathering power from a god or goddess thought form, and again, think demonic entity here, the spell taps into the energy that all the flowers, read that flowers, of the god and goddess had put into it over the centuries. This has been explained as a kind of giant cosmic battery. There's another word I've heard for it too, the Akashic Library. There's another one, I'll think of it in a minute. In Wicca, this process is called drawing down the moon. Now, we've all seen it in movies, they draw the circle, they go around it, they're chanting, but what they're doing is they're tapping into this giant cosmic battery, the gods and goddesses that are all out there and all the knowledge that's been gathered through the times, but they call it flowers. We look at that word and we see the word flowers. This is where the term flower child come from, and there's a whole lot more to that I'm gonna talk to you very, very briefly in just a second, but not very long. All right. When I teach this in person, one of the things that I offer to the class, and I warn them very, very quickly about it. I guess that's another slide. I forgot about this one. We've learned from the chapter on Canaanite sorcery that the ancient Canaanite sorcerers cast circles on the ground in order to bring up spirits. This is the very same practice. Now, remember, the Canaanites were the ones that they were sent in to take out. Same practice. All right, here's what I was looking for. Here is a link, and it's still there because I checked it just a day or two ago. I would highly caution you, if you watch this, to be very prayed up. This is a true ritual, a true, I would call it demonic ceremony in a cave somewhere. I believe it was in Mexico. If you're not a strong Christian, please don't watch this. Even if you are a strong Christian, ask the Lord, put a guard on your mind, pray before, during, and after, and ask the Lord just to let you use it for learning purposes only. But it kind of gives you an idea of what is there. Some people are called to look at this stuff, and I think some people are not. Here's another one. Now, this one I used to keep on my computer, and I would never talk about this in a mixed group teaching. I would barely talk about it in a group of just women. I would tell them what it was, and I would offer it to them and email them or give them a handout for those that would look at it for themselves. This exists still on the internet, but I can't access it anymore. I have no idea where it is on my computer. I had a computer that I lost a few years back, and I lost a lot of this stuff. But if you have access to this, please email it to me at askrenalyn@yahoo.com because it's some very good information. Now, this is pretty rough, but there's some, shall we say, interesting thoughts about celebrating the ancestors with menstrual blood. They call it ambrosia, flower of the gods, food of the gods, and it comes from the flowers, the flowers. And that's all I'm going to say about it. And that's all for this round of Ancient Paganism with Rena Lynn. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.